Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the kitchen. I'm excited about today's product, but I feel like I'm a little late to the party because as I was telling someone else about it, they said, "Oh, yeah, I've heard of those before." I said, well, I haven't. And if I haven't, maybe you haven't. And what I'm talking about, of course, is the wooden rolling pin. And what makes this special is it has these rings that you put on the end. And that allows you to roll to a precise dough thickness. Revolutionary, right? For some things, it's not going to work for everything. This is not an all-purpose tool. But if you're looking at making pizza dough or uh, uh, ravioli or cookies, or in my case today, crackers, this seems revolutionary. So let's open this box. Now, I have to admit that I've opened this before, and that's why these are out, because I couldn't get them back in. So let's open the box and pretend like I've never opened it before. And what we have inside are these rings. And, well, let's get to that later. We have this dough mat. Great. Here's the rolling pin. And they want to make sure that you know that there is a leather handle that you can hang this from. Fantastic. And you've got all these various sizes of rings. And this little holder. So when your rolling pin is full of food, or actually if your counter is dirty, you can just set this on the holder, protecting both the rolling pin and the counter. I like it. These rings can set a thickness of 1/16 inch, 1/6 of an inch, and 1/4 of an inch. Now, why is it 1/6 of the inch? I think it's a metric system thing. I don't know. But I would expect an 1/8 of an inch, 6 1/8. Who can really tell the difference? This is a 7mm ring, 10mm, 2mm. So there's your metric. For you metric fans, that's your measurement. Stick around. We'll have some fun. We'll demonstrate the product. We'll make some delicious crackers. Before I can demonstrate the rolling pin, I have to make the dough. I've never made this before. We're making sourdough cheese crackers, but there's not that much dough to it. There's only a half a cup of flour, and the rest is cheese and various ingredients. But let's give it a try. If it's mostly cheese, it's got to be delicious, right? The first ingredient is, of course, the cheddar cheese. This is 8 ounces of sharp cheddar cheese. It's delicious. I just had just a little nibble. It's fantastic. Would these crackers be infinitely more cheaper if you bought them? Of course they would, but that's not the point. Homemade is always better, right? Just to make sure that the cheese is evenly distributed, I am going to shred it first, and then we'll follow the rest of the recipe. The recipe doesn't actually say to shred the cheese, but I'm going to anyway, because that just seems like the right thing to do. Well, that didn't take long. All right, there's a little bit stuck to the lid here. I'm just going to throw it in there. I also have 2 tablespoons of butter that I am going to put in here now. I just cut it up in the cubes. Again, it didn't say to do that, but why not, right? And I'm using my sourdough discard. Well, I've had the sourdough culture going since September of 23, so it's doing pretty well. I need 1/3 of a cup of this today. Looks about right. Next, I need a half a tablespoon of ranch seasoning. One teaspoon of table salt. And then half a cup of flour. And that's, I mean, there's not a lot to this recipe. And away it goes. I think that's it. And then it says put this in some plastic wrap and let it sit in the refrigerator for 20 minutes. It's actually made like a little loaf. Look at that. All right, into the refrigerator. And while this is refrigerating, I'm going to go ahead and preheat the oven for 350 degrees. While I'm waiting for the oven to preheat to 350 and the dough to cool for 20 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and put the silicone rings on the rolling pin. I'm choosing the 7mm ring, which should be 1/6 of an inch, and goes on very easily. It's not tight, it's not too loose, and it doesn't seem like it should move too much unless I want it to. And I mean, it rolls very smoothly. This rolling pin is made of solid beech wood. It is sanded smooth, although I can feel a little bit of the grain. They say that it is non-stick. We'll find out once I get to that cheese dough. And I mean, if I were to just get this without reading anything about it, my inclination would be to put some kind of a food grade oil on it. But it doesn't say to do that. In fact, there are no directions. So I'm not going to do that. And maybe there's nothing to worry about. We'll find out. They say that it is non-cracking and durable. And like I said, you can hang this from a hook or something. When I was growing up, my mom had a baking mat, and it was kind of a hard plastic that it rolled, but it kind of snapped back. and that was, it worked well for her, and she used it forever. This I like more. It's a silicone mat. They say it's a food grade silicone mat, and it really grips the counter. So I'm not worried about this mat slipping at all, which is different from the old school plastic mat. So I'm looking forward to that. As nice as this baking mat is, the recipe is telling me to roll it out onto silicone baking sheets or parchment paper, which I won't get to test the baking mat to its full potential. But my hands are tied. I have to follow the recipe. With this baking mat, there are measurements on it so you can see the width of your dough. And like for my pizza oven, I can only have a 10-inch pizza in there anyway. So this seems like a really handy device for that. It could be tricky to actually get a 10-inch pizza round using this, because you would have to really, it would have to be centered perfectly the whole time. So I don't know. I don't know how well this would work for a 10-inch pizza. I would say the smaller the pizza, the better. A little personal sized pizza would be perfect for this. But I do think that this will work well with the crackers, because we're basically just rolling out a rectangle of dough. Our dough has been chilled. I just need to cut it in half and roll it out lengthwise. This is really thick. What they say to do is to roll it out on the parchment paper, cut it, and poke a hole in the center of each cracker, but don't separate them. Just go ahead and put them in the oven. So let's roll it out now with my 1/6 inch thickness. You might be asking, why don't I use the handles? Well, that's just my way. Okay, it is sticking a little bit. It is the first use, and that probably makes a difference. Yeah. I want square edges on these, so I'm just going to trim this up so it's more or less a perfect rectangle, and then cut it. I will cut it into 3 strips lengthwise. I might have been able to do 4 strips. These do seem a little thick, but I think it'll be all right. And just to put a hole in there, it says to use a toothpick, but I'm actually using a swizzle stick. So I didn't think a toothpick hole would be large enough. And I don't know why you do this, other than just for authenticity. I don't know. I might need, I'm going to trim this up in case I need to put a 3rd sheet, or a 4th sheet even. I might need to have 2 sheets per pan is what I'm concerned about, but we'll see. Yeah, some of these crackers aren't exactly square, but that's the homemade look, right? It said to roll it out as thin as possible, and then it said 1/8 of an inch. But maybe that's just because they didn't trust you to be able to roll it out to a 1/16 of an inch. Not sure about this one, but we'll make it flat anyway. The last step is to bake these for 15 to 18 minutes. And then after they're done baking, you prop the oven door open with, I'm going to use a wooden spoon to prop it open, and just let it cool off and dry out your crackers naturally. These are so thick, I think we'll see what happens, but I am doubtful they will actually be crisp. I noticed that I have some dough stuck to my rings here. It doesn't say if the rings are dishwasher safe. I think they are. I've watched plenty of silicone items in the dishwasher before. I think this should be washed by hand and not with soap either. So I'm just going to take a wet washcloth and wipe any, I mean, you can see there's moisture on it, but I don't see any debris. So did it stick to the dough? Well, the dough stuck to this, but it's not, there's nothing left on it now. So it should be easy to clean. These, I'm going to put these in the dishwasher. I'm not worried about it. It'll be fine. And this baking mat, I'm just pushing down this thing. You cannot move it. But you can lift it up, and that's fine. But once it's on here, it's not moving unless you want it to move. The hardest step of all, waiting for the oven to cool down and the crackers to crisp up, obviously. I did pull the mutant cracker off. This is the final cracker of the batch, so nobody will notice it. No one will ever see it, except for me. I'll give it a try. It feels crunchy on the edges and softer in the middle where it's thick. This is delicious. The larger the rolling pin, the more versatile it would be. If I could see, this goes to 12 inches. So if the rolling pin would have gone out farther than 12 inches, I mean, it would have been an enormous rolling pin. But then you could actually make a round pie crust as big as the guide in the baking mat. Now, they made no promises to do that, but they did provide the baking mat. So it made me, it's teasing me because I can't, I mean, I guess you could use it without the rings, and then the 12 inches would be fine. Then at that point, it just becomes a regular rolling pin. But these are interesting to work with. They obviously work. They made it very easy to roll my dough to an even thickness. I like that. This stuck a little bit. It said nonstick. It stuck a little bit. So that's the only thing that bothers me. When you say nonstick, it should be nonstick. But it doesn't bother me enough to take off a point. So I'm going to give this a 5 out of 5 star rating just because I do like these depth rings. That it makes my life so much easier for a project like this. And I really like this mat. These silicone mats that don't move are so nice. So you get the mat, you get the rolling pin, you get this rolling pin rest, which I had to keep reminding myself to use. But if you get in that habit, it does do a great job of keeping the rolling pin off of the countertop. And I like the silicone rings. I'm going to give this a 5 out of 5 star rating. Thanks for stopping by.